you know, there is so much opportunity for the content from the podcast. And that was what I mentioned earlier, is I have a different goal, right? And my goal is authority. And so taking the content that you create and repurposing it is the core of all of our marketing efforts. From what we repurpose with our book, to what we repurpose with the podcast, to what we repurpose with our monthly webinars, everything that we do, all of the content is repurposed and distributed over and over and over again on multiple channels, and just to gain exposure. So it's impression share, and our impression share is high. So
welcome to Show Me the Nuggets, where each week Joe chats with world-class entrepreneurs to find out the key principles, strategies, and processes that lie behind their outstanding achievements. Now, your host, the no bullshit serial entrepreneur, Joe Troyer.
Hey everybody, it's Joe Troyer, and welcome to another episode of Show Me the Nuggets. I'm super excited today to be joined by Jim Ahlin, and we're going to be talking about the benefits and the importance of having a podcast and using it as a tool to really grow your agency. So for those of you guys that don't know Jim, Jim runs an agency called Roofer Marketers and also runs a successful podcast called the Roofing Success Podcast. Jim, man, super excited to have you here today.
Excited to be here, man. Thanks a lot, Joe.
So before we really dive deep on today's topic and into podcasts, can you tell us kind of how you got started in digital marketing in this crazy marketing and agency world?
Yeah, so I started in web development back in the early 2000s. So right after essentially right after Y2K, like 2001, 2002. Yep. And I got a degree in management of information systems. And the reason I chose that major was I thought, computers, half computer science, half business administration, how could you go wrong, right after while the .com, stuff was going on. I was like, that's the one, man. And so that's how I got into it. And then, I did web development, server-side programming for some years out of that, and learned that I was not a programmer. and that is not something that fits me. So I started moving off into other business ventures. I've always been very entrepreneurial, but I took that skill set into the businesses that I started, and I did all of the marketing and internet marketing and digital marketing for those companies. And then, always did other things, kind of side projects, building, niche and authority websites and Google AdSense, and different, all of that. And then, always was in the world. And then I actually, a few years back, was doing pay-per-lead, and that's how I came to know you through the pay-per-lead side. Great. And was in a mastermind with my current business partner, and we realized, man, we're the only two people really working this, and so we kind of joined forces and created the agency. Had a few iterations in the beginning. Started off as a pay-per-lead model, and then kind of became what Roofer Marketers is today.
Awesome, man. So a couple things there I want to pick at. First, it's funny the side hustles that you always had, right? I find so many successful entrepreneurs, much like me, super ADD, can't focus on one thing, right? Yeah. Like got something that's happening, paying the bills, but it's like always over here doing something else. So that just happens so often here on this podcast, and it's cool to point out because that's who we are.
Yes.
And then I think next, what's interesting is obviously you have a little background knowing me in the pay-per-lead space, and you won't hurt my feelings at all. But I'm curious why you moved from or transitioned from the pay-per-lead space. Like what was the takeaway, Jim, for you and your business partner?
Really, it was the consistency of the income on a monthly basis is why we transitioned more to the agency model. And I was doing pay-per-lead in the roofing space, and it's very competitive, and the cost per click and the cost per lead is pretty high on that also. So the margins are there. The other part of it that I wasn't I guess that was part of that transition. Now that I think about it, is you had to be so in tune with every lead that was generated and if that was a qualified lead or not, right? So there was a lot of time on the back end in that, making, hey, we're charging you for, 18 leads this month or 62 leads this month, whatever it is. And then them going back and saying, well, that person, they were, a quarter mile outside of my service area, or, so it was those are some of the things that kind of led us out of that.
I'm curious, do you guys do any pay per lead at all, or you've made the transition?
Not anymore.
To
all
agency model?
complete agency, monthly fee model. So
well done. In this day and age, I think that the pay per lead model is very flawed. Just to be 100% honest, I think that it lends itself to selling to the wrong prospects as well.
Yes.
Right? Because you only have to pay for results. So churn and arguments over leads and lead quality and what is quality and price honestly takes up way too much time instead of focused on like just building each other's business.
That's right. Yeah.
So I still do some pay per lead, not near as much as I used to, but I only do it to the people that are my normal clients, right? They got to make it through. They got to prove to me that they can be a client, that they know what lead quality is, that they've been paying pay per click, that they understand everything. And when they get to kind of, top positioning in Google with Google Maps and organic and PPC, and they're like, hey Joe, or hey Jim, like I need like 30% more. I need 40% more leads. It's like, what else are you going to do? Yeah. And that's where I position pay per lead now. And I think that,
right. Yeah,
exactly. And I think that most people should probably be doing that as well. And I've talked about that a lot, but curious to see that you had similar findings as me.
Yeah, for sure.
So what made you decide on roofing?
We were doing pay per lead and roofing. And then my business partner Brian had a really good legacy client in his client in his legacy agency. So in his general agency, for people that don't know the different terms here, a niche, roofer marketers we refer to as a niche agency because we're only in one vertical. Where Brian's past agency dealt with attorneys and med spas and a variety of clients, roofers and gutter cleaning and all kinds of different things. So he had been working with this company for a while and doing really, really well for them. So that kind of led us into roofing.
Awesome, man. So before we jump into podcast specific stuff, what can you tell us about what's happening in the marketplace right now? What are you seeing as you're working with your roofers all day, every day? Like what are the top things that you guys are focused on right now in your business?
Yeah, so what we focus on really is maximizing opportunities for roofing contractors, right? That's the way that we put our marketing system together is all about just maximizing opportunities. So there's 5 opportunities for a roofing contractor to generate a lead for their roofing business on the local search engine results page of Google. So the way that the search engine results are formatted when there's commercial intent in that search. And so that's what we focus on. So we're, managing their pay-per-click advertising, getting them ranked in the Google Maps section, optimizing for the trust factors there with their reputation management, and doing the SEO and then retargeting all that traffic that comes through that. Then also social media marketing, so building their brand awareness and things like that through social media marketing. So why we're focused on all of those things at once, we've seen the market shift, right? You can't just anymore, right? You can't just rank a website and the leads come in. You can't really just get your Google My Business listing ranking, right? They keep shrinking that proximity on where you're showing up, right? You can't just, if you're just running pay-per-click in roofing, you got a high cost per, high customer acquisition cost through that channel, right? So the mix of everything is really what we focus on, and making sure that we're maximizing their opportunities. And that's where we feel like we're able to generate the best results for our clients.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So you're all about maximizing the most opportunities and then using a blended approach to get them leads quickly and lead long term, and
That's right.
ultimately at the end of the day, long term, get them the best blend of leads and also cost per lead.
Yep, for sure. That's
Yeah, that
the
was very
that's
eloquent.
it.
I think most people have a very hard time explaining that. It sounds like you've done a couple of pitches
I
before.
I may talk about this, a lot every week. So
That's awesome.
yeah.
So what do you think are some of the key traits of the roofers that you work with that go on to be quote unquote successful, right? They make it with you as your program. What do you think are like the traits of somebody that comes out successful working with you, Jim, in 6, 12, 18 months versus somebody that cancels, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So the clients that we find that are most successful are the ones that are that want to be involved in the process, but want to allow us to do what we do. Right? There's a combination there. So they will work with us on on things that build authority for them, like shooting video, getting us the right imagery for the website, things like that. But then they let us, kind of manage the rest from there. The other thing is that the ones that really they're kind of sales and marketing organizations first. That they understand that they are not they're not a roofer, right? That it's a roofing business, and I think that's where a lot of people get lost. When they're running a business, they think about the business, but they're really a sales and marketing organization that sells or provides that service. And the ones that understand that are really the ones that succeed, because they know that there's a customer acquisition cost, right? They know that there's a long-term value to those clients. It's not just about, like, kind of referring back to the paper lead stuff, when's the next call coming in and was it a good lead or not, right? It's the long-term vision. People that aren't looking short-term in their business, those are definitely things that make for that better client.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So you're asking leading questions ultimately throughout your sales process, so to speak, to figure out, where's their mind at, right? Are they dying for that phone call tomorrow, or are they thinking about long-term average customer value and the journey and how they build that, right? And how they build their systems and processes for marketing, and that's really important stuff for sure. Yeah, that's great. Good takeaways there. All right, so now let's move over into the podcast, man. So how did the Roofing Success podcast end up kind of coming together?
It was a kind of something that I saw other marketers doing, and actually a gentleman I met at a mastermind that we were at, that he was getting some really good traction with this podcast, and we had a conversation. Now I just thought, that's genius, man. Like, for many years now, it's the person who's standing in front of the room is the expert, right? So how do you get in front of the room? And that's really what the podcast is about. And then we just turned around to the question of how can we, everything that we do from a marketing standpoint with roofer marketers is how can we provide value, right? And the podcast can provide huge value if, so interviewing, what I do in the podcast is I interview successful roofing contractors and just have a conversation about what they've done right and what they've done wrong. And in those conversations are just these amazing lessons that, and kind of strategies that other people can follow. And if they're really listening, they, things to avoid also, right? And sometimes those things to avoid are some of the biggest things that you don't want to run into. So we did that, and then in between those successful contractors, I sprinkle in kind of some industry experts, right? Sales and marketing, sales coaches, business consultants to the roofing industry or contracting industry, things like that, to continue to bring in a kind of a different idea, right? A lot of the professional sales coaches and business consultants have they have frameworks, right? So they have the ability to really give some good actionable advice to people at the same time. And so that's how it got started. And it's just been a blast, man. I've learned so much from it personally.
That's awesome.
Like, that's my favorite part of it, is that I'm that constant. I require that constant, intake of new information, right? I'm just always looking for it, and so it's been fun for me in that regard.
That's awesome. So positioning wise, the podcast helps you establish your authority, right?
Yep.
Is there any other like big goal in terms of positioning that you guys were looking for?
It really is. It just the building authority, and then it inserts us into the conversation with some of the industry leaders, right? So we inserted ourselves in that conversation. So you don't have to wait to be invited to the party, right? Throw the party. So we threw the party, and we invited everyone to visit us. And now I just had my first, just earlier this morning, we're starting to get people to reach out to asking to be on the podcast now, versus us, going out and we're only 12 episodes in. This is a baby. This is just the inception of it, right? Just gotten so much great feedback from people.
That's awesome, man. So the two types of guests that you have on, I think, are really important. I think that most people, when they think about running a podcast, or even people that have launched a podcast, when they think about their podcast, they haven't really thought about their personas and the types of guests that they want to have on. So I'd like to take a couple steps deeper into that. Why did you choose those two types of people, right? The industry expert and the successful roofing contractors. Like, what were your thoughts there?
The thought process behind that was really, if I was a kind of a struggling contractor or a new roofing contracting business, who would I want to hear from, right? And in that, you and I've been at masterminds, and it's like, man, when you get in those rooms with people that are just as successful, more, some are way more successful than you, and you get to have those conversations with them or hear their stories, it's mind-blowing, right? There's some things that there's always just huge takeaways. And so really that's kind of the basis of it, was just the people's stories and being able to learn from the successes of other people, right? The old adage, success leaves clues, right? And that really that was really the way that we thought about it. But it was just, how do we, what would I want to hear if I was struggling, or if I was even just being in the industry. I'm sure you and I both listen to a ton of podcasts around digital marketing and
sure.
Other interests of ours. So for a roofing contractor, their interest would be to hear about roofing contractors. So
for sure. Were you at all scared or concerned, Jim, that like you were going to launch this and it was going to be like crickets and nothing was going to happen? Was that fear ever there?
Not ever, man. Like we just go, right? We just
That's
go.
Awesome.
And I have we'll probably talk about it too. And but there's I don't only have one objection. My one objection with the podcast, or one goal with the podcast, is not just to see how many people I can get listening to the podcast, how many podcast subscribers, how many podcast reviews, how many podcast downloads. That I don't even have those kind of goals written down anywhere, because to me, it's not about that, right? It's just about providing value. So if I can provide value, I know what's going to come from it, right? And definitely
100%.
have. Yeah.
I'm curious, if somebody's listening to this right now, and they're like, but I'm not an industry expert yet. I've chosen a niche, right? But they think that that's stopping them from getting started, right? Like, I don't know a bunch of industry coaches that I can get on the podcast. I don't know a bunch of successful, insert niche here, a bunch of successful roofing companies that would come on. What would you tell them?
So I'll give you what I did, right? So when who can I invite onto this podcast, right? I started, that we have a couple of clients that I wanted to make sure that I invited because they, I know their businesses, and they're really, really intelligent business people, and so kind of started there. But that's a very limited pool. So I just went to the Inc. 5000 and I typed in roofing contractors, and there was 20 of them, 25 companies that were on the Inc. 5000, and I linked in each one of the owners, and I and just reached out to everyone that was on the Inc. 5000. That's where I started. So I didn't know any of these people. Most of them didn't know us, but you can see that they are doing something, that they have some success, and that they're promoting their business by getting their business on the Inc. 5000, right? So they're looking for promotion. So that was the first thing that I did. The second thing that I did is we went through the industry associations, and we still do this. We have a list of all of the past speakers for the past 2 years in all of the industry associations in relation to roofing, and that's who we're going after, and inviting to be guests on the podcast now. And then every once in a while, something just pops up. There was a roofing contractor that kept tagging us in their posts on Instagram, and I was like, want to be on the podcast? Like, I looked into their company a little bit, and I was like, wow, they're doing some really cool stuff. And so there's been a lot of interesting things that have happened since then. But the original kind of get started, went to the Inc. 5000, typed in the industry, roofing contractors, and started there. Went to the industry association and looked for who the speakers were. Phase 2. That was that will give you enough guests for a couple of years. So.
All right, so that's the source, right? To get the data, at least a bunch of guests that you can start reaching out to. You said something that's interesting that I don't want people to overlook. I know exactly what you meant, but I want to make sure that we really shine a spotlight on it. You said after the Inc. 500 or 5000, you look for the roofing companies, and then you made a comment that they're looking for promotion. What did you mean by that?
So to be on the Inc. 5000, it's you have to submit an application, and there's a fee to it, and that means that, to me, that business owner is looking to gain exposure for their business, right? So that is the type of person that you would want on the podcast. They're not looking to just hide in their office and go on with their daily lives. They're looking to become a leader, maybe a thought leader in the industry. One of the first gentlemen I had on was that. After I invited him on the podcast, I learned that he had a speaking event coming up that he was teaching roofing, right? So he would like exposure also. So the people that want exposure for their business is definitely people that you want to go after, and whatever. So thinking of things like that, if they're advertising in certain ways, they want exposure for their business. So those are people that are easy to accept your invite, right?
Yep. And that's so true. I think one of the things about podcasts that I love so much is that podcasts almost level the playing field. What I mean is that they give you a platform, right, where you can invite other people to the platform, right, which is great. And you can do that in lots of different ways. You can do that on Facebook by doing a Facebook Live, or YouTube, you doing a YouTube Live. You could do it on Instagram, same thing. But at the end of the day, the difference is one thing for me. The difference is nobody puts out their stats on how many subscribers you have, how many followers you have, how big your audience is. And podcast is new and all the rage. So there's no qualifying criteria. So nobody knows if Jim's audience is getting 5 downloads a day or if it's getting 10,000 downloads a day. And even better yet, it's not a sneaky thing, but even better yet, nobody even asks.
They don't. They never.
We've been doing the podcast for about a year now. Every week we're at about 50 plus episodes, and we've never had one person ask, and we've had best-selling authors and all kinds of really brilliant people, they've never once asked, well, how big is your audience?
That's right. It's amazing. That is a great point, Joe. That's like, no one asks. The first invite I sent, I didn't even have an episode, right? I didn't even have a channel. There was no, and I had 3 people accept my initial invitation email within 24 hours. That was it. It's very easy to get started. And to your point, people aren't looking to be on the biggest podcast. They're just looking to be on a podcast. It's awesome.
Yep. That's awesome. So we found the contacts. We have our personas for the contacts. We know where to find them. You gave us great resources for that. So to take it a step further, then, what do you think messaging would look like in terms of outreach, or what's worked for you?
Very simple. Saw you, Mr. Contact, Mrs. Contact, saw you were a speaker at the last, Western Association of Roofing Conference, with the topic of XYZ. Would love to have you on our podcast as a guest, or, my name is Jim Ahlin. I'm the host of the Roofing Success podcast. Would love to have you as a guest. That's it. Real simple. And I honestly, I haven't had a no, right? Like, it's, people just say yes. Some people, I've had people just ignore the email and not respond, but I've never had someone just say, no, I don't want to be on. So.
Yep. We've had some people like, tell us more before, right? Like, digging a little bit, but that's only in like crazy situations. A couple of best-selling authors that we've had, and it's like, oh, well, we've also had A, B, and C, and we just list like who we think are the most influential, and then they're like, oh yeah, okay, no problem. Like, I can count on one hand out of 50 episodes how many times that's ever even happened. That's the brilliant part.
It is. It's
so
awesome.
I love that. That's easy. So if you're going after the association, we just saw you at this association or heard this recording or whatever, this was the topic. Love to invite you on to talk about that with, in front of our audience. Everybody wants a platform. Right. And then if they're just on the Inc. 5000, it could be the same thing. Like, you could just be, hey, I saw that you were on the Inc. 5000. Congratulations, hitting this achievement. We'd love to invite you on the podcast. Again, they're looking for that promotion.
They are. Yep.
So that's brilliant.
And the people, that's the thing with those speakers, people that are speaking at industry events, they have that same mindset, right? So, they're right there that, yep, I want to get my message out there more. So
I want to talk about what you are doing with social media and your repurposing. I think that you guys are doing a killer job. I don't know if you're doing it, Jim. Whoever's doing the repurposing for you guys is crushing it. I think you're doing great with that. But before we do, what do you think I'm missing potentially, Jim? Like, what's the 80-20, or what haven't we talked to yet about in terms of podcasts that you think potentially we're missing in this conversation?
It's really the opportunities outside of the podcast with the content of the podcast. And I think that's where you're going with it, that, there is so much opportunity for the content from the podcast. And that was what I mentioned earlier, is I have a different goal, right? And my goal is authority. And so taking the content that you create and repurposing it is the core of all of our marketing efforts. From what we repurpose with our book, to what we repurpose with the podcast, to what we repurpose with our monthly webinars, everything that we do, all of the content is repurposed and distributed over and over and over again on multiple channels, and just to gain exposure. So it's impression share, and our impression share is high. So
that's awesome. Absolutely love that. I think you guys are doing a brilliant job of that. I'll make sure to link up in the show notes, you guys on social and your blog, and where I'm seeing it being posted. You guys are doing a great job with that. What do you think is the 80-20 of that? What's important? What are the systems? Like, what are the things that, if you could say, like, Joe, just do this, or just do these one or two things, what would you tell me in terms of distribution and repurposing?
So the first thing that I did, which was the easiest thing, and that was I used an app, Headliner, to to take cuts out of my podcast. So I created an image, an image background, and then you just go to Headliner. And a lot of times, I think Headliner has a podcast integration now where you can actually pull your episode up and chop it up, right? So the macro is you take your 30-minute conversation or hour-long conversation, and you take my goal is to take as many 59-second clips out of that as possible. So 59-second clips are Instagram clips, but they go out on Facebook. We push them on LinkedIn. We push them on Twitter, and so those 59-second clips, out of every conversation that I have with a podcast guest, I get between 25 and I think the highest I got was close to 60 pieces of content from that episode. So now we have the large piece of content, right? We have the podcast episode. So now we have 12 podcast episodes. We probably have 400 pieces of content that have come from those 12 podcast episodes. And then we take that and we push it, man. We do probably 8 to 10 posts a day on all social media platforms, and we use podcast clips as one of our categories of posts.
Okay. What's worked for you guys in terms of actual scheduling that content then? Obviously, that's a lot of posts, right? Every single day that you guys are pushing out, recycling, and what tools or honorable mentions would you have?
So the big tools out there that I found that we're using Sendable right now. Agora Pulse was one that I was strongly looking at. Who did I see recently? Was it maybe Social Pilot? I can't remember the exact one, but Sendable is what we ended up using. And one of the reasons what I looked for in the tool was how automatically it would post for me. Some tools will not post on LinkedIn automatically. They have a different algorithm where it'll push it to you and then you have to post it. Same thing with Instagram, where if you want the post to be in your as a Instagram post, they'll send you a notification to your phone. They'll send the image. They'll send everything, and then you have to post it. I didn't want to post 10 times a day. That was my main problem that I wanted to solve with the tool. And so Sendable pushes everything to all of those platforms. It posts on YouTube. It'll post on all of the platforms native without my interaction, other than Instagram stories and I think IGTV were the two that I couldn't do through that. And so really the way that I do my stories is I have one set up a day, I get the one notification in the morning when I'm having my coffee. I press upload upload to Instagram. So I always have a story on Instagram every day.
Gotcha. Does that come from Sendable too?
Sendable, yep. Everything's through Sendable.
Gotcha. Awesome. Perfect. Have you figured out any takeaways on posting times, or you just don't care, or like what content's worked best, or any other high level takeaways just after posting?
Volume. That's my takeaway. Like the more you post, the better. I don't analyze the stats as to which posts do the best, don't do the best. Like I said, we're pushing like 10 posts a day. I need a full-time I would need maybe 2 full-time people to analyze the posts that the analytics on the posts and see which one is getting the most engagement. My thought process behind it is not what is getting the most engagement, what time is best for posting. The core concept behind what we're doing is impression share. I had someone I was talking to yesterday, I think, that when I told him what we were doing, he said, wow, it's like a retargeting campaign, right? Like I'm just blanketing impression share. That's what we're doing. I've had, so a couple of stories in relation to that. I got a call from a gentleman who was, they were starting a roofing franchise company system. and they were inquiring into roofer marketers to potentially help with their marketing, digital marketing. And he said the reason that he called me was because every time he opened up LinkedIn, I was there.
Yeah.
Think about that, right?
Exactly.
Every time. We have employees that have unfollowed us because every time they see me enough during the day, right? They don't like I am always there. Every time, if you follow us on Instagram, every time you open up your Instagram, I will be in your story and I will have a post in your feed, right? On Facebook, the organic reach might not be the best there, but LinkedIn, you can't, if we connect on LinkedIn or you follow our company on LinkedIn, you can't get away from us. And that's the concept behind it, is you're not getting away. Once you connect with me, you're going to see me forever, whether you like it or not. You got to unfollow me, unfriend me, unsubscribe, right? Like that's the only way to get rid of me. And so
I love it.
That's the concept, man.
I love it. Yeah, the impression share, right?
Impression
and it's where do you get that impression share? How do you get that impression share? How do you stay top of mind? Yeah, I mean, that makes perfect sense. My employees, the same thing. They don't unfollow me on social media, but YouTube ads, we run a lot of YouTube ads, right? And so I'm getting tagged by somebody in one of my companies every day saying, I went to go to bed last night and went to turn on something on YouTube, and look who it is, and it's a picture of me, right? Like,
right.
And it's great. And it's about impression share. I'm just paying for it on YouTube. You're not, you're just, getting it naturally.
We run YouTube ads also, but
and I've seen you guys' Gmail ads, and I've seen lots of your retargeting. So maybe this is a natural segue, but I'm assuming that all those clips and all those assets then create great campaigns and lots of assets for you for retargeting and other things as well.
Yeah, the library just keeps filling up with more and more stuff, and just to reiterate it too. So we're focused on volume, but each of these clips is quality content, right? Because it really is quality content to our target audience. So it is quality with that quantity. And so we have a ton of stuff that we can use for retargeting ads, for everything else that we do. For sure. Yeah, it's awesome.
I'm assuming you probably are going to have to, you're doing the 59-second clips yourself, right? Or do you have that outsourced?
I have my assistant doing it now. I started doing it myself, and it took some time, right, to go through and listen and write a headline for each of those clips. And then I have a full-time video editor on staff that creates a background for that episode. Okay. So each episode has its own background, and we insert the video and a headline and the title of the episode on that. We're calling them videograms, right? Headliner does audiograms, we do videograms. So.
Yep, perfect. That makes perfect sense. Yeah, I can say that it's been really difficult to get in our podcast process to get my team to be able to write those headlines and know. What are the call outs that we should be doing for the audiograms or for our visuals? And that's been definitely a big work in process. So that's why I assumed getting somebody to be able to pick out quantity, but also still have quality is difficult. So I think though, I think if you started with it, going through it, I mean, an easy training exercise would be just go through this one and tell me what you picked out. And then
that's how we started. So we'll say how we started, how I transitioned it over to her, which was recently, is I said, look at this, look through these episodes that I've already cut. We had conversations around the style of the copy for the headlines and things like that. And then she started to, she did an episode, and I went back and I read the headlines of what she did, and we have conversations there, and then it'll progress into where I don't have to be involved at all anymore. But but yeah, there is some work to it, right? But everything good does
sure.
take work. So
exactly. I love that. Everything good is going to take some work for sure. 100%. So Jim, I want to ask you one more question. Thank you so much for coming on, man. You've provided a ton of value. I'm going to link up to all of your social in the show notes. Get everybody out there looking at what you're doing, and you guys should be emulating this for sure. Jim, is there anything right now that you need help with in your business? Any resources, any types of hires, any types of recommendations, anything that all the people listening to the podcast could potentially help you with, since you've given so much here on today's show?
Man, give us some comments on our podcast, some likes, and follow us around. That's all we need, man. It's
awesome. Awesome, brother. All right. So last departing question. So instead of asking you to recommend 3 books, which I feel like every podcast in the world does, I have a problem. I'm an avid reader, but I'm an avid quitter of books as well. And what I mean by that is I'm either picking it up and I'm getting through 10 pages and I'm like throwing it out the window, or I pick it up and I like quite literally won't drop it, right? Like you can't pull me out of the book. So when I have great guests here that I really admire, I like to ask them, like, what's the one book that you think has made the biggest impact on the way that you do business, right? As you look at Roofer Marketer, like what's made the biggest difference? What book has made the biggest difference and why?
So the book that's made the biggest difference for roofer marketers is the 7-Figure Agency Roadmap by Josh Nelson, man. That's
awesome.
I mean, honestly, that's the book that's the formula that we emulated to build roofer marketers. So that's the one that has that one has been the most impactful on roofer marketers specifically.
Perfect. So Josh was on the podcast. We'll make sure to link that up in the show notes, and then also link out to his book as well. And when you just look at the way that you do business today, right? Do any other book recommendations, right, come to mind? Maybe not specific for Roofer Marketer.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think I have like maybe a trilogy, right? I'll call it a trilogy, right? Like it started, in the early 2000s with Robert Kiyosaki's cash flow quadrant. So people who aren't familiar with that, it's a conversation about being an employee, self-employed, a business owner, and an investor, and the differences in mindset of each. And that really helped me to understand the path, right? You may start as an employee building a skill set, move into a self-employed position, who a lot of us agency owners have been, right? We're doing the work that we're, and doing the sales and doing the account management and doing. And then the transition into becoming a business owner and to provide, putting together a structure in your business and delegation and things like that. And then, where the end goal is to become an investor, right? To the businesses that you build, building up enough capital to where then you can become, you can invest that money into the future with it, whether it's real estate or business or whatever you're investing in. So that was it. And then really over the last couple of years, one thing that got me, one book that got me kind of focused on things, because I for many years I tried to be a perfectionist, and I always wanted everything to be right when I wanted to launch a new product or a business, and so the Lean Startup was one of those core books that it was like, hey, do something and test it, right? And just let the market speak to you about what they want, and evolve what you do around that. And then I would say that love them or hate them, the 10X rule by Grant Cardone was one of those a psychological shift, that it takes 10 times the effort to do what you think, or that 10 times of what you think it would have taken, right? If you think it'll take 10 phone calls, it'll take 100. And just having that mindset on a daily basis that it's going to take 10 times the effort that you think it's going to take, puts you in a different place, right? So that's kind of the
100%.
the trilogy there.
I like the trilogy, man. Thank you so much. And all of those great books. Got to laugh at what you said about Grant, though, especially with what's happening right now with Grant. Lots of drama, lots of crazy YouTube videos. If you don't know what we're talking about, go type Grant Cardone in YouTube. Whether you love him or hate him, like you said, you can't deny. Definitely, I think a great book as well. And kind of resets your expectations in a very much needed way, I think, for most people. So definitely agree. Three fantastic books. So Jim, man, thanks so much for coming on. I really enjoyed hanging out today, and look forward to reconnecting, hopefully in person here soon once the whole COVID situation's over. So thanks so much. And we'll see you guys on the next episode. See ya.